was a note from the from the fourth chakra or something like that. I don't know. Good evening, everybody. We are actually 2 minutes early tonight. It's 8:58 on the 10th of February, 2024. Will it be our last year? Who knows? So much is going on. This is Divided We Stand, and we're glad that you're here tonight. This is a channel and a group that is not monetized, so if you're interested in commiserating with those who are against Donald Trump and the Republican Party, we are Divided We Stand, and we ask that you become a member of our Divided We Stand group page on Facebook. If you're not a member of Facebook, please consider subscribing to Divided We Stand on YouTube. There are a lot of Divided We Stands on YouTube, but you can kind of fish through the search and find us. And if you subscribe to us, please hit that notification bell so when anything comes up, you will be notified. And we appreciate you being here, and this is truly an interactive group. If you show up, you can bet that a lot of your comments will show up here and we will be commiserating. Yes. Unlike a lot of different channels where they're so popular, you can't get a word in edgewise. So welcome. And I'd like to welcome my co-host and good friend, my friend who is an educator and a journalist and whatever he is. He's a lot of different things. He is retired, sort of, but he's coming out of retirement tonight to be on Divided We Stand as the co-host. And that would be our David Price. Dave, how are you doing tonight?
Well, interesting. I'm finishing up a second battle with COVID.
Oh God.
Fortunately, I've had all the boosters and everything, and weird. I'm not going to go into details, but basically, it was 2 days of a sore throat, preceded by, which is kind of interesting. I did some research on it, tooth pain, which apparently in this latest version of COVID is typical. It was not a symptom earlier. But the good thing is I'm on recovery. I'll be off. When can I go out again? Monday. So I'm glad we're doing the show this way. If we had to do it in a studio, I don't think we could do it. So we're there. Right. But it gave me a lot of time, obviously, to do not a whole lot. And if this week is any indication of the way the election season will be, we may have to run 3 or 4 shows a day just to cover what's going on.
It is getting critical, isn't it?
And a couple of things that we know going in is because of circumstances, this has already been anointed will be the longest presidential election season in American history. Because normally it doesn't start until until you've had the conventions. Well, it looks clear at this point, although this week clouded some things. But, at this point tonight, it appears, as it has been for the past umpteen weeks and months, that it will be a return engagement with Donald Trump trying to unseat Joe Biden. But a little different tonight. I like to take a little different approach to people. I hope, again, just to show how busy the week was. Let's take it week by week. Sure. Yeah, week by week. No, let's take it
right from last week, Sunday.
Yeah. So we will. We'll go day. I meant day by day. So, of course, when we left the show this time last Saturday, we were looking at the Take Your Border Back convoy that was headed from Virginia, my state where I live, on down to Texas. Mm-hmm. It was supposed to be a pretty big deal. They were saying 700,000 estimated attendees. Up to 15 governors. They took on the name, which I kind of like, God's Army.
Nice. So
it had religious overtones. They did, in their defense, they did pledge that it would be nonviolent, and it almost was. One of the reasons it was probably as nonviolent as it was is it was a complete and utter fiasco. From the standpoint of the organizers. They didn't get to the 700,000, Brian. The best estimate you can find out there were about 50 trucks, vans, cars, vehicles. And so they get down there, this group, And apparently they're very disappointed because, A, it's small, but also the fact that they thought there would be, they could have a confrontation with thousands of people crossing the borders. Well, that didn't materialize because they weren't that near the border, right? I mean, they were equal past Texas, but that's still a ways away from the border. So what did they turn to do? They started fighting with each other, slashing their tires. It did raise a whopping $157,000, the organization, but the organization has not said how to spend the money. Now, look, we've said before, the border situation deserves a solution. This year, or past year, there were 2.4 million encounters at the border. All right, and that's a lot, but we know that the border service is underfunded, etc. And we'll talk more about that week. But were you surprised, Brian? If we take that Sunday, this big thing that it failed abysmally. And also, I guess to add to that is they didn't follow up on it. You know what I mean? It's like it failed, but it was just they ended the coverage. It was supposed to go to Monday and ended the coverage Sunday morning. So I thought that was interesting.
Well, I'm just wondering, Dave. He said, Joey says we need to turn the volume up. I'll do it, I guess. Right. Well, usually, for example, when we think about January 6th, we know that Trump beckoned these resurrectionists to come to
Insurrectionists,
my God, insurrectionists.
No, God's army had the resurrectionists.
Right. But I don't know. Do you know if Trump actually asked them to come now?
No, actually, that's a very insightful point. Trump had nothing to do with this. And we'll see as the week progresses that he had a lot to do with other things that were very influential. So the question, I think it would be obvious if Trump directed this, it would have probably attracted more people. I mentioned before in the show that I was in the Hillary versus Trump campaign. I was living in Atlanta at that point. And I went to a huge rally with Trump. And, it was clear then that his followers would follow him anywhere. And he's added more followers who will follow him everywhere, even more today than he had on January 6th. Well, Monday, I guess, everybody has a day off. So I guess Monday was kind of a day off, maybe to just recuperate from that failed rally. But then we get to Tuesday. What a crazy day. Okay. So what do we mean by that? What's going on? All right. So first of all, you get a 3-judge panel, 2 Democrats and Republican, who rule against Trump's contention that he should have immunity for anything he's done. And of course, it couches in terms of the president should have immunity.
Right.
They were pretty scathing in what they said. They basically said that if you were to allow that, it would be anti-American, anti-democratic, no hope, no chance. Now, again, Trump or his attorneys will appeal that. All right, so it's not over yet. It'll go to the Supreme Court. But the projections are that Trump will lose at that level too. So far, right, the week begins pretty good for Biden, right? And it gets a little bit better on Tuesday also. Alejandro Mayorkas, the border czar, the House Republicans wanted to impeach him. And Michael Johnson, the leader of the House Republicans, got together, and he didn't really do his job because I guess he didn't count the votes or he counted them wrong or something. And what you have is it fails. Now, you should never have that happen. And it failed because the 4 Republicans voted against that idea, and they were right. First of all, it would be the first impeachment, if I think I have this right, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. I think it would be the first impeachment of a cabinet member since 1856, which again was pre-Civil War. And it was pointed out pretty clearly that impeachment is for malfeasance, not for disagreement in policy.
Right.
And there was nothing about any malfeasance on Mayorkas' part. Now, that sounds good, But in fact, the deciding vote came when one of the Democrats came from the hospital in a gown to vote. And a couple of Republicans were missing. So it looks like it'll be brought up again next week, and who knows what the outcome is. But at least at that point, while it showed a dysfunction on the Republican Party, it showed that things were still kind of holding.
Mm-hmm.
Now we start to get something really crazy. We go that night, we go to Nevada. And they're having a primary that doesn't count. What?
Right.
It didn't. It was
none of the above or something like that.
And well, here's what happened. Trump didn't even bother to run. Okay. And neither did anybody else. So it was a one-woman ballot, Nikki Haley, and she actually lost to none of these candidates. Wow.
Well, it's interesting how they had that set up, obviously, to ensure that he could still win and
right,
not be on the ballot.
And they have a separate caucus, and they'll do that, and he'll take all the, which is another thing to follow, people. It's interesting how many states have come up with a winner take all now. A number of states had divided up. You get it apportioned to the vote. Now it's like winner take all, which of course favors Trump. I mean, that means nobody else but Trump gets those votes. All right, so Tuesday, action-packed day. Your thoughts on that day, on any of those? The Supreme Court, or the Superior Court ruling against Trump, the Mayorkas failure.
Trump? I mean,
yeah, the appeals court ruled against Trump.
Oh, the appeals court. The appeals court.
Yeah, right. Ruled against Trump, and you've got Nikki Haley losing to it's as if it's just wow. Well, what are your thoughts?
Things are, first of all, at least I have the feeling now that things are moving toward the last part of the race, so to speak. That all these years you're waiting for something to happen. Now it's picking up pace, and they can only wait so long before something happens. So, of course, that means he's going to be going through appeals processes. And you still worry because you have people like Bannon who literally convicted, but the judge gives them an out by saying that he can appeal, and they use this process. And of course, it worries me, even though you look at what happened on Tuesday. That was I guess it was a good thing. But it's probably going to go. It's obvious it's probably going to go nowhere with John Roberts and the Supreme Court. So it gives Trump a feeling of victory when he really shouldn't have any with that type of situation.
Well, so, we got to.
I'm sorry.
And no, saying at this point, like I said, if those of you who are scoring at home, Biden has the edge for this particular week at this point. Well, of course.
Well, seemingly,
Yeah, nothing lasts forever. Because
if I can interrupt for a second, Dave.
Yeah.
This is something that Ronnie and I were, have been discussing generally, and I'm sure you and I have had this discussion before. For all the bad things Republicans have done, we've got to keep ourselves squeaky clean, and yet we just seem to pull the rug out from under ourselves. Whether
you're going to see
Menendez or
you're going to see that come to play as the week continues to unravel. The week that was, right? In fact, it made me think. One of my favorite authors, well, I should say writer, because he wasn't really an author. He was a Jimmy Breslin, who was a legendary columnist and one of the greatest writers I admired. He and Hunter Thompson, and there were just some great ones. But Jimmy was there, and he wrote a book about the 1962 New York Mets, which is the New York Mets of that era were pretty awful.
Last year for Richie Ashburn, or maybe
yes, correct, and Gil Hodges and a number of other players who it was interesting. The Mets drafted. You could pick from the teams, and of course they took the older players, like for names. Right. But anyway, Casey Stengel gave them this, who was the manager of the Mets at that point. And the title of the book was, "Can Anybody Here Play This Game?" And it was this is kind of the way this week in politics. So so you got Biden and Democrats, you're kind of in position. Then we get to the next day, and there is a bill that would deal with the border crisis, which the GOP has said is horrendous. It is a crisis. I think it's safe. I mean, I don't think it's misnamed. We have to figure out what to do, and this bill was to address it. And what did they do, Brian?
They ran away from it.
Correct. And why did they run away from it?
Because their king told them to.
Exactly. Donald Trump, and a wise move on his part, said, "Don't do it. I want to campaign on it. Remember what he said in the last? Only I can solve it, or only I can do it." And that's what he wants. So this crisis suddenly was not enough crisis to vote on, and Republicans. Now, it was interesting because there was a hope that while the House was definitely in Donald Trump's pocket, that maybe the Senate would act as adults. And it was clear in that particular instance that they're now in the Trump camp.
Right.
They'll hang out their own.
That gives a message to us that we have to figure out how we're going to deal with that type of thing.
I mean, you've got Mitt Romney commenting against it. I don't know. They even threw under the bus the Republicans who worked to put the compromise together.
Right.
And whenever you're going to have a two-party system or more, a compromise is the only way to get things done. So we can honestly say that until we get a new House and a new Senate, and by new, I don't mean just new members, a new way, a new majority, something, that government in the House and the Senate is completely dysfunctional. Okay. They can't even do what they need to do about anything.
Dave, I don't know how. I mean, it comes down to the voters right now to be able to lay down the hammer. But again, the way the system's set up, and we've talked about this ad infinitum, even if we go out and we all vote, the way these districts are set up, it's still going to be tough to have some type of landslide to put an end to all this crap.
Well, I would agree with this. I think at this point, to look to any institution, be it the Supreme Court, the Senate, the House, the executive office itself, for the solution, it won't happen. So it has to be the people, we the people. And global, I want to address that in a little bit. Okay, so hold on to that. It's a yes/no answer, but I have that coming up. So we catch our breath and we move on. Now we're what up to? I think Thursday now. And Thursday was a huge day. And you'd say, well, wait a minute, you said, yeah, they're all huge this week. That's what's kind of funny. They really encapsulate all of what we're going to be dealing with from now until the election. So first of all, the Supreme Court heard arguments about why Trump should not be on the ballot in Colorado. So rather than go through, I'm going to go through these one at a time. So, what we know is at this point, Colorado had taken him off the ballot. That was appealed. The court said he could remain off the ballot, the state appellate court, and it got to the Supreme Court. Now, nobody knows what the Supreme Court is going to do until the Supreme Court does something. However, astute observers of the court know that really you can pretty much tell from arguments,
right?
And the questions. It's the questions from the justices.
And nowadays, you can pretty much tell just by the person who appointed them.
This may be the exception to that.
Well, we hope.
No, not the way we hope. It's going to be the other way. I'm going to predict
9-0.
No, I don't think 8-1, 7-2, 8-1. I'll go out on a limb and say 8-1. And I don't know who the one will be, because even the comments coming from the liberal judges seem to indicate that this might not be in America's best interest. And as much as it pains me to say it, I see the reasoning behind it. While you know, and I know, and anybody with any sense knows, that Donald Trump was actions led indirectly and in some ways directly, and the same with his inactions, what he didn't do. Certainly, you could make a case that he incited the insurrection and certainly could make a case that he did nothing to stop it.
Absolutely can make that
But
case.
both that. But here's
Trust
the
your
problem.
eyes.
Here's the problem, Brian. It hasn't gotten to any court.
Right.
It was
And
heard.
This is the stalling.
It was heard in the House, the Senate. There's been a long-standing understanding, if you will, that the disciplining of a president or vice president is done through the House, the impeachment process of the House and the Senate. So at this point, there's no official ruling anywhere, that Donald Trump was guilty of the insurrection. Now, so we can get frustrated all we want, but I do understand, and the Supreme Court, some of the justices raised a second hesitation, and they said, the court should not be deciding who is president, the people should. Can you imagine? And you can. I think there are, if I remember correctly, Maine and Colorado have already done it, but I think there are 14 other states in some process of removing Trump from the ballot. What that would be like, I mean, it almost would have to be, that's why I think it does make sense for the federal government to remove someone, right? Then it's universal. It can't be anywhere. It can't be this state. It can't be that state. And it would open a Pandora's box. And certainly the Supreme Court has done that before with Gore, Bush. They did rule on that. And it was the wrong ruling, I think. But, it stands. And that was along party lines, 5-4, if you remember. So it will be interesting. But I think at this point, if we were counting on Donald Trump being removed from any state ballots, I don't see that as an answer. Okay. So that's kind of that moves Trump up right now. So now it's kind of there's in this game there's a double for Donald Trump, we'll say, or whatever you want, whatever analogy you want to use. Well, Biden's up to bat now, and he gets some really good news. Seemingly, there's a report coming under that he won't face charges in the case of his improperly taking and having in his possession classified files.
It infuriates the hell out of me that he had those documents. It just still
let's stop there for a minute because I want to say that too. Look, I don't get it. I really don't. In today's political climate, the opposition is going to make up shit about it. That's going to happen.
Absolutely.
Why do you give them any ammunition to do that?
Right.
Now, we could say, and there's all this spin going on. There may be a possibility, as he's kind of intimated, that some of that was placed there by staff members, erroneously, and it was found. It was really interesting. I wish I'd written that down. It was found like in his garage or something like that, next to Hammer, all the things he was next to, right? It was kind of interesting. But then they also found some in his notebooks where he had written it down. So he knew, he knew what he was doing. But that news broke on Tuesday.
Why the hell would he take that shit? Why did he need to do that, especially as a vice president?
Well, let me ask you. Let me turn it around with another question. Why did Hillary have to do what she did?
Because didn't have to, and it bugged the shit out of me again.
And that's what we're saying. And the one that really
why
bugs me.
Can't we be? I mean, I know what you're going to say. These are what politicians do, and you're right.
Right.
But like you said, there should be some sense. Like, understand, there's a political war that's going on, and that has been going on, like no other political war, and to jeopardize people like you and me because you feel you've got to have a server.
Let me bring it back to Hillary's husband, Bill. Did he really need that blowjob?
No, he didn't.
But he gave into basic urges that honestly, if you're going to be president, you kind of got to be above those urges.
Suck it up and not do it. That's
and
it.
Did you mean that as a pun? Suck it up?
No, but it does come out that way. But any human being, if you're in that position or any position, you just got to just hold on.
And so often those sex stories have a little twist to them, right? Which was we were all interested in Russian prostitutes peeing on the bed. Then it was dismissed, and I think legitimately so, because everybody said, "Oh, Donald Trump engages, likes golden showers." No, he's a germaphobe. There's no way he let anybody piss on him. But then others said, no, that wasn't what happened. The prostitutes were on the bed, peeing on the bed to deface the bed because it was the very bed where Barack Obama and Michelle Obama had stayed when they were visiting Russia. That could be true. It's just there's always this little kink. So with Bill and the cigar, that was the kink. It was the cigar. He inserted the cigar as a dildo device, and then obviously inserted that into his mouth. And whatever people do sexually is fine. Okay, consulting adults, fine, but there are certain things that you can't do. Your business is education. My business was education.
Right.
You don't sleep with your students. You don't do it. There's no. There's even a question if you should sleep with your students after they're no longer your students.
Which is kind of strange, Dave, because you see, every once in a while in the news, and it ruins the rest of us. You'll see this. I don't want to be sexist, but some woman, having an affair with a 14-year-old kid, and you say, "What the hell is going on?" I mean, you're a professional.
In my time, and when I was working at the high school where you are now, I was quasi-legal representative for the union, and there were. And I wasn't involved in all of them. I was involved in 3 cases of teachers having sex with students.
And I'm sure each
and there were more,
or anybody that's listening to this program probably went back in the 60s or 70s.
Right.
Probably was, but still, there's that line, and you're not supposed to cross that line.
And I agree. And in my other career as a journalist, you really shouldn't sleep with sources. Again, because it compromises what you do. So You're right. I mean, why they do it, I think obviously. You have to have a huge ego to be in politics. I mean, you have to, you win. There's power is an aphrodisiac. I mentioned it before, but I think it bears repeating. I had a friend, very good friend, of a former fellow newspaper person, who became the top legislative aide for a New Jersey congressman. And I would still visit him. This was years ago. I was still a reporter. And I'd visit him down in Washington. He said, "Damn." He said, "Do you realize you can get anything within 2 blocks of this place that you want? And I got to work for one of the honest congressmen." I said, "Well, that's good." He said, "No," laughingly. But I mean, it's just unquestionable. You've seen it play out. Right? So we get that. But the good news that Biden won't face charges is completely undone by what the author of the report puts in there. Mm-hmm. And what he does is he basically says...
It's a character assassination.
He basically said, a well-meaning elderly man with memory problems.
Says somebody who's not a doctor.
Says somebody who's not a doctor.
Might be true, but he's not a doctor.
Well, and so now suddenly, in an age and a time when one of the major concerns about the American, and we can't dismiss it, polls, I'm always the one to say question polls, but you look at them, somewhere between 72 and 75% of Americans are concerned about Biden's age in the presidency. Now we can jump on and say, well, Trump is only 4 years, Trump is 77, Biden's 81, so 4 years difference. And we'll come back to that again about Trump's mental acuity. But it really lends itself to that argument, right? You've got now, they can say that this document, right, has established legally that Trump is whatever. Now, of course, it gets misinterpreted immediately. One of your favorite Floridians, Marco Rubio, comes out and says, this report said he had dementia. No, it doesn't say that, okay? Mm-hmm. It doesn't say that. He had, basically what it says is his faculties are diminished. Well, apparently, Biden took great offense to this, including a remark, which I've yet to see. Now, I'm not going to read off, 345 page report. Mm-hmm. Basically says there's nothing here that we can get him on. But part of the reason he used that argument was he said he just appears a kindly gentleman, old and feeble and nobody would convict him. Well, that's not, that's not, who knows what the jury's going to do. It's either there was enough to convict or enough not, evidence. But Republicans are delighted. They jump on it. Immediately, one of your sexual fantasies, Marjorie Taylor Greene, calls for evoking the 25th Amendment. Do you know what the 25th Amendment does?
No.
Okay. It's the one that was put in after Reagan was shot. The idea of the succession of the president and how do you remove a president who's incapable of being president. So that's already in play, all right, based on this report. It's not going away. And the other thing was, but I haven't seen that page yet. I know it's there. I'm just saying, I got to look for it. That somewhere in this report, it says that Biden was not even aware of the day when his son was killed. So and we know that Biden doesn't like attacks on his family, and I would be angry too. So I wish someone had counseled him not to rush out that night and have a press conference.
Right.
Because in the press conference, if you watch it, there's a point where he says, "I wear the rosary, and I got it from," and he just stops. He doesn't know where he got it from. That was his son's. There's a point when he messes up between the president of Mexico and the president of Egypt. Which anybody can do, but not not when you're fighting the idea that you're forgetful and senile and old. He also has the stutter, which, interesting enough, if you stutter, you have a tendency to think about your words more, to anticipate your stutter, right? Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, many people have the idea that if you speak hesitantly, you're stupid. Joey, absolutely right. I mean, of course. But again, to my contention, Brian's good. You don't give him the ammunition. So right. Biden, look, if Biden hadn't taken the friggin' documents, there wouldn't have been the investigation. There wouldn't have been the ruling. Now they're going back and forth, whether it was proper to put it in there, whether it was improper to put it in there. And of course, this smacks of James Comey and the idea of Hillary's emails.
Right.
And again, though, getting back to Hillary, she didn't do the damn emails. There wouldn't have been the problem. And this gets to the question becomes, of course, the guy who did it. Do you know his name? Test.
Repeat this again.
Do you know the special prosecutor's name? Who?
Oh, Hur.
Ben Hur. Yes. No.
Ben Hur.
I keep saying. It's actually Robert Hur, and Hur H-U-R, not H-E-R. He is a Trump appointee, a Republican. Okay. Does he have a vested interest in it? Perhaps. But who appointed him? Do you know?
Who appointed her?
Who appointed her?
And you're saying it's not Trump?
No. He named him, but who appointed him special prosecutor?
I would imagine that would have had to have been Bill Barr.
Nope. Merrick Garland.
Oh, that's that piece of shit.
Now, there you go. Now, what we don't know about Merrick Garland is he being overly cautious? He's not trying to undermine, I don't think, deliberately.
He's so worried about himself and the way he looks and trying to seem fair that he's so unfair.
Well, and that's the idea. So now you've got two debates going on. You've got is Joe Biden a feeble, ancient, doddering old man who's incapable of being president? And then you've got was the report and her fair or not? And it inserts commentary. And you pointed out, there used to be a rule. It was actually called the Goldwater Rule, that you would not psychologically assess candidates from a distance. In other words, but that has gone by the wayside, and Trump helped that go by the wayside.
Right. Everything has changed.
Yeah, everything has changed. So it's all up there. And what, the things that won't come back. So now we've got even more evidence for those who don't really need the evidence to say that Biden is incapable of being president. And there will be a move. I would be surprised. Yes, I would agree 100% with what Gary just put up there. Um, and again, I think nobody asked me, but I know from personal experience, give yourself a few hours to calm down. I think Biden was truly thought it was despicable. He mentioned, but it was interesting what he said. He said, "What dare him? What dare him mention my son? What gives him the right?" Well, if he asked you that and you couldn't remember, that's true, right? If that's how I would have done it. I mean, the thing would have been to say, he never even brought up my son's name. Well, he did. um, well, Ichabod, that is a question that's being debated down here all over the place. The best thing that I've found out, or the best reasoning that I've seen for that is, this report was different than that report in that this was commissioned to be findings, a certain kind of findings, and a DOJ direct report. So it doesn't mean it means anything. I don't know. I don't know if anyone knows. We don't know. The other thing is the Mueller report was released when Trump, was in office. I think there was more control. You mentioned Bill Barr. There were more controls over that. I think, for whatever Merrick Garland's doing, I'd love to get him alone and, not that you find out anything, but, hey, Merrick, what the hell are you doing? What's going on? Right? I agree, the guy, but we're really talking about a slice, and I don't even know what a slice of Americans who haven't made up their minds yet. That's really what we're talking about.
Dave, you want to check this one out here?
Yeah. Well, I don't think it would surprise. Okay. Here are some possibilities. Let's use what Gary just put up there to be. All these can't. I mean, anything. Aliens can come down and abduct you and I in the middle of the show and turn it into something else. I mean, okay, given that, the absurdity of that, but there is a very real possibility that one or both of the candidates, President Biden and ex-President Trump, because of many considerations, could be physically incapacitated or even die between now and the election.
Right.
No question about that. Or even between now and, if not the election, the inauguration. Because remember, there's that couple months period in there. There's a possibility. I don't think it's a probability. There's a possibility that Trump will be incarcerated for some criminal intent. But at the end of this week, some of that's fading as the
How
delays.
about Aileen Cannon with the shit that she's pulling?
Well, let's talk about that. We're going to go out a little bit because we're just all over the place. All this
Right.
is going on at one time. So for those who aren't familiar with that, she's the one who's ruling in Jack Smith's case, Florida, about the election or the January 6th
protect
violation.
the witnesses, and she's obviously
Correct.
not doing it.
Correct. Correct. There is a real question. Okay, let's do it this way. There is no question that violence in America, political violence in America, is increasing. There's no question about that. That's not open for debate. Okay. There's no question that the feelings are at an all-time high since the Civil War. I wasn't around in the Civil War, but certainly in my lifetime, and I would say
you can figure this.
But
out.
I just think it's there, and there's reason to believe on Donald Trump's side that the fix was in, and certainly anyone who's on a testifying list would be fair game. You're supposed to protect, up into things. So it will be interesting. There's a report out that she's already sent the names out, and she's trying to use this again. Who knows that she's trying to use this as a way to formalize what she already did, which was wrong if she did it. So I mean, there's no question of the judges. Cannon is weak. She's in. I don't know if she's in Trump's pocket. She may just be in over her head. I don't know.
Or both. But I would think that she's in Trump's pocket. I think she's They're intimidated. They're afraid of what will happen, and this is why you see what you see across the country. These
Well,
politicians.
Ichabod's comment gets to the fact of the tragedies in Joe Biden's life. The Republicans don't care. They don't care.
They don't care.
They don't care. To try to put any kind. First of all, I firmly believe this, and I testify in a court of law. Donald Trump is the only person I've ever met in real life or encountered in real life. Because I shouldn't say met. I mean read about. I encountered Charles Manson, for example. Is the only person that I cannot find one positive human trait in.
Right.
And what's happened is he plays on that, and he's got the enough of the Republican Party behind it. Mm-hmm. I was reading a Facebook thread today of friends from the Bridgeton area, and they were lamenting the fact.
Dave, one of ours, Joe, the football player, you'll know, he got frustrated with me, and we were texting back and forth. He says, "Can't you find one good thing about Trump?" I don't have anything good to say. There's nothing.
There isn't. I mean, it's unbelievable. So no, I mean, but I really don't care that he's that way personally. I mean, he's got to live with that. But the fact that he was able to get the nomination, was able to win the presidency, and now is the odds-on favorite tonight to regain the presidency. Now that's tonight.
Fairly or unfairly.
Fairly or unfairly, right. Now, we're not done yet. Of course we're not. We're only on Thursday. Let me just check my notes for a minute here. Yep, so we got all this going on. So on Friday, we get more information on the Fulton, Georgia case of Trump interfering with the election.
Right.
He and I think it was 17 co-conspirators, and 4 have pled guilty. So you don't plead guilty if you're not guilty. You really don't. I mean, you just don't. There's no reason to. Well, I mean, so, if you watch TV, it's like, oh, if you say this, we'll drop it to manslaughter.
Maybe in Russia where they force you to do it.
But I'm just saying. So, I mean, if you get 4, maybe 1 would do 4. I mean, then that's pretty much kind of indication that what was going down is what this claim is going down. But now we've got the prosecutor, Fani Willis, who most people acknowledge is a very astute and good legal mind, falling victim, it appears. And it wasn't even Valentine's Day to love. Mm-hmm. So what do I mean by that?
Here we go again. This same thing.
So in this case, what happens is she appoints the team that's going to go after Trump. And it is after. I mean, that's not, they say you're after him. Yeah, you're after him. He's guilty. You think he's guilty. The prosecutor is always after you. They're not on your side. I mean, that's not what they're supposed to do. They're convinced that there's guilt there. And so she appoints a lawyer, Nathan Wade, to be head of the team. Now, there were some questions initially. Apparently, again, this is from what I've read and what research I've done, Mr. Wade was a good attorney, but was not well-versed in criminal proceedings. Really didn't have any practice in it. And he did pretty well. He's been paid $625,000. Not a bad chunk of change. Still, no real problems. But he was engaged, and still engaged, in what is being described as a very bitter divorce to his wife. Okay? Still nothing there. But according to allegations, he and Miss Wills became involved in a romantic relationship. Okay? Now you're starting to get, but it gets a little bit worse because he paid for a few of their trips together. So that means like he's using that $625,000, right, for her benefit. So this comes out, about a month ago, maybe a little bit longer. Because actually, I think it was Martin Luther King's Sunday, the Sunday before that. So it had been January. And she goes in front of a black church and says, basically, I've sinned. I'm a sinner. I'm not perfect. Didn't say what she was doing, but there's no question. This is about race. She plays the race card and then plays the female card. And, kind of thought it would die. But now it's come back, and it appears the judge will ask her to testify, and Mr. Wade to testify. And of course, it was one defense attorney who uncovered this, but all the others, including Trump, have now joined on. So the case, the Georgia case, is definitely in peril. What could happen? It could be ruled that she would have to recuse herself and the whole case dismissed. That's a possibility. It could be that she would have to recuse herself and the case could be re-looked at and taken on by someone else. It could be that it's found out that no, none of this is true, and the case may proceed. Looking at what I seem to see, and I'm only guessing here, I don't think they're going to shake her hand and say, "Go with God and continue." I don't see that happening. Well, what does that mean then? Well, it means just what we said. Will the case be dismissed? Will it be started over? What it definitely appears to mean is it certainly won't be started in time to have an impact on the election. That I think I'm pretty safe in saying. Now, just like, look, again, we have to say this. I don't give a flying fidoobie who Miss Wills decides to have a relationship with. I really don't. Except when it jeopardizes the job that she is supposed to be doing for the American people.
Right.
So you've got a female Bill Clinton, maybe, who knows? Certainly, Donald Trump. And we keep getting these whataboutisms, and
it's just
Donald
poor judgment, David. It's
well, and look, we've all done that. We've had poor judgments. I mean,
absolutely. But this is critical.
I mean,
this is not.
And there's certain things that you break, like but there's certain things that you understand. I mean, like I said, I wasn't the greatest teacher in the world. I certainly, did things wrong from time to time. But I knew that the one, or not the only thing, but one thing you didn't do is you didn't have a sexual kind of relationship with students, because sometimes they'd make it up anyway. They'd make it up anyway.
I can make it up anyway. Then you're really
and you needed the reputation of that would never happen.
Absolutely.
Because I said I defended enough teachers where that was the case, right? I was only a boss a couple of times in my life, but you knew that you did not have a relationship with an underling. You just didn't. It never really works out well because you'll be accused of favoritism or whatever.
And that does happen.
Oh, it does happen. Now, what attorneys are saying, and we understand this as human beings, if you spend a lot of time with someone, you share. Look, I don't know any of the principles in this, but if you're going through a divorce, you're kind of vulnerable, right? I mean, you're not at your best. Maybe you feel, I don't know, whatever, and you're working these late hours, and suddenly you have a drink, and suddenly something develops. But at that point, you need to say, no, the case is more important. So we got to keep our eye on that. We haven't even gotten to crazy, so let's look at the crazy week. What were some crazy things that happened? All this stuff is politically real. It's
the Tucker Carlson interview. That's
what I was going to say. Tucker goes to Moscow. Now, I don't understand how anybody with any kind of thought pattern available to them could think that Vladimir Putin has U.S. interests in his heart. I just don't understand that. It just isn't within the realm of understandability. Tucker only cares about Tucker. Right. He goes over there. It was a shill. You're a Russian expert. You know that Putin laid the ground rules of what could be said, and if Tucker had asked something wrong, he could have been shot on camera. That would have been cool. That would have been pretty cool. But
I don't even think he had to worry about it, Dave. I think that he knew.
Well, if he came out and asked the wrong
team.
Yeah, well, I know, but I'm saying if he did,
Oh yeah, it wouldn't look
and,
good.
And I don't know. I was following the evil side of the GOP this week a lot, and they said there's a real hero. There's Walter Cronkite. What? Right. The guy's a shill from Moscow. But that's
he didn't even challenge Putin. it was, and the things that Putin was saying. For example, the one thing, and I was watching it in Russian actually about 2 hours ago,
Mm-hmm.
and the part where I'm up to right now is he was actually from what I was translating, he was blaming Poland,
Yes.
for World War II, as far as saying that they couldn't come to an agreement with Hitler, and they went against him, and then therefore they were invaded. It was like, in other words, it was their own fault that they were invaded, and completely disregards anything about the Soviet Union and Germany, basically carving Poland in half. And then there you have Tucker Carlson just listening to him like a little kid, in his bed, listen to his mother or his father, and just, accepting everything that he says. And it's funny because Putin said something like, I'm sure you have some workable knowledge of history or some foundation of history, don't you? And Tucker basically says yes, but I don't know that Tucker Carlson really knew anything about Russian history. So he just had to accept whatever Putin said. And Putin goes way, way back, it just, it was just a history lesson, and from the point of view of a Russian nationalist. Well, what can you say?
But while that was crazy, and there were some other crazy things, I think the craziest thing I ran across followed up on Biden's press conference. He did get off one good line. I don't know if you saw that. What's the guy? Pete. What's his name for Fox News in the morning? Susie, not anyway. One of the Fox
I think
News.
You're right, Peter Susie or whatever.
Or something. I don't know what his name is.
Ducey,
that's it, or something. Anyway, he was shouting, and it is chaotic. I mean, as a former journalist, I mean, I understand, what you have to do, but there's a lot of showboating and grandstanding now with reporters. A lot, like I've got to be the most, dominant vocally and all that. But anyway, at one point, I guess he says, "Do you really think you have something like this? Do you really think you have the intellectual capability to continue to be president? Is your memory is your memory?" And Biden looked at him and says, "My memory's so bad, I recognize you." Meaning, that was like the only moment of anything. But after that, the next day, God, how fast this stuff circulates. Here was a relatively new, twisted conspiracy, had some roots in others theories. Here's what some right-wingers were reporting. Number one, that it's been known all along that Biden would not be the nominee. Okay, that's been the plan. So this is laying the groundwork for that, right? Well, who's going to be the nominee? It's going to be Michelle Obama.
Obama, right.
Now, the fact that on numerous occasions she has said she has no interest in politics. She's even gone on record saying she wished her husband didn't have an interest in politics, etc. All that's dismissed. But here's the thing, did you know, I did not, this came as a shock to me. Did you know that Michelle Obama is not Michelle Obama?
Right, they're saying that it's some kind of male or something like that.
No, it's really Michael Obama, that she's had a sex change operation, and that will be the surprise because they don't think a woman can win, so she will run as a black man. Really? I will stop tapping on the table. I do that from time to time when I get excited. This is not exciting. This is disturbing. So really, what we're looking at is we're going to have an election between a judgment of someone's mental acuity versus someone's indications that they will drive America into authoritarianism. Yeah, well, yeah, I know, Sandy. I mean, of course. But there's no basis in reality.
Well, think of this, Dave. Can I go in a different direction just
Sure.
for a second? And we talk about this, like there's just no way out of this. And you said it more than anybody that you just don't know that there's going to be any change in our lifetime. this is what we're going to be dealing. And how can we mentally take the strain of the people Sandy's talking about here, the ones who believe that kind of shit, and then we have to be around that. It's like you're in a madhouse, and you've got to deal with it every day. I don't know how we're going to look. We're only 5 years into the Trump crap, or the 6 years in. I don't know what it is, but it's enough already. But apparently, it's not.
No.
I think to the day we die, we're going to deal with this.
Well, again, let's see what Marty has. Why the hell would Michelle Obama want to go through another 48 years of what they had done? Yeah, I mean, well, that's not going to happen. But that doesn't stop the reports from saying it's going to happen and people believing these absurdities. And you think that's bad. I can't wait for tomorrow. You know what happens tomorrow, right?
Super Bowl.
Taylor Swift jumps out of her mega jet
and endorses Biden.
And endorses Joe Biden and her significant other, Travis Kelce, because the fix is already in that the Kansas City Chiefs will win the Super Bowl. Right wing crazies are convinced of that. And he will then order. The deal is because he supports which he does. He endorses people getting vaccinated. Thank God I was. If you don't get COVID for a second time. It will be ordered that everyone must get the vaccine, right? But this is a new vaccine because Bill Gates has finally been able to install the mind chip. Right. And this is another story that's out there. How do you deal with that? You can't. If you and I are going to disagree on something, and let's say you invite me over to your home and you say, "Look, I just painted my wall. What do you think?" And I say, "That's not a wall. That's a refrigerator. There's nowhere to go." And that's kind of where we are. Oh, yes. I forgot that one. Yes, that was last night. Just what we think, Joe is messed up a little bit. Yeah, I urge everybody to see that. I can't do a good Donald Trump. I wish I could. But he basically said, and in the middle, he's talking to the NRA, right? And he basically, and Pennsylvania, that's right. There'll be no more Pennsylvania. They'll change Pennsylvania's name. What? Agreed. I would accept. I really would. As weird as that sounds, I really would accept if Joe Biden and Donald Trump would meet at the White House and shake hands, and neither one run. But that's not going to happen. But actually, that's not true, because today in the New York Times, they wrote a very long, involved article about how Joe Biden can exit gracefully. So there is still going to be pressure on him to step aside. Now, I don't
Especially
know.
If he falls and hurts himself.
Well, yeah. Of course, again.
Don't you dare fall, Joe.
No, we got to, at the end of this, that's just 1 week, Brian, what we went through today. Just 1 week to Transylvania. Yeah, that could be, Sandy. I don't know. It's okay. Again, as we've said, you really have to make a decision about Donald Trump. That's really what you have to decide. That's the only decision you have to make. You either want Donald Trump to regain the presidency or you don't.
Right.
If you don't, if you feel that's the greatest danger to America, democracy, your family, your community, your state, your world, your country, then you have to ask yourself a second question. Who is best positioned to stop him? And unfortunately, if you don't agree with everything, it will be whoever the Democratic nominee is. There is a strong point. Maybe next week we'll talk more about it. Give this some time to switch. You've got the No Labels. I don't know if you've been following that group, who are proposing a third party. Earlier tonight we had that. I don't see at this point in my lifetime, I mean, I don't know how many more years I have. I don't have a whole lot probably because I'll be 72 next month, but I hope I have a few more. I don't see in my lifetime a third party being viable. I just don't. It would have to be someone with unlimited wealth or access to unlimited wealth with the popularity of Taylor Swift.
And you'd kind of have to have the end of MAGA, because as long as they're out there, you're essentially dealing with a two-party system. Because if you do have a three-party system, they win every time.
Or they certainly, and that's that's playing out in Montana right now, which is one of the big states, because John Tester is an anomaly. He's a Democrat senator from Montana, and they just don't happen often. And there's a what would you call it, regular Republican running, and now a MAGA Republican, and so hopefully the MAGA Republican will win the primary, but you don't know, and you've got, I mean, you think now you've got a crazy House, you've got an ancient Senate. There's not. I saw comments tonight. There's no realistic way to get rid of the Electoral College. I agree. It should be gone. It should never have been. All right. There are people who say that maybe for the next 5 or 6 elections, maybe longer, the candidate with the fewer votes will win because of the Electoral College. Right. It certainly has happened enough.
And we would have thought that was unheard of when we grew up in the 60s. You knew about the Electoral College, but it just wouldn't enter your mind that we were going to get to the point where the loser is going to win.
No, and you can debate the causes of all this.
It's just a certain sense of unfairness to the whole situation.
Well, yes, and if you believe like I do, I believe that really the president's power is somewhat limited. It really is, whether it's whoever it is. But what they do is set a tone for the country. That's really what they do. That's the big thing. They get past what they can get, past, but they set a tone. And I don't want Donald Trump's tone. I don't even want Donald Trump. Like I said, I live what did I say? I got to remember this again. I always forget whether I think it's 4.6 miles from the White House. And I don't even want him within that radius. I want to circle around him. So Brian, we've got a few minutes yet. What do you think? I mean, what
well, I'll say what
at the end of this crazy week. Where are you?
I think I'm of the opinion that success is untenable because of so many different things. Those of you who really follow the climate crisis every day, we know what's happening there. You just don't know one day to the next what's going to happen if the Gulf Stream breaks down. If we have a blue ocean event, that could be the destruction. We have the problem with Ukraine, the Middle East. But I still think the major problem is, this is the country that drives the world forward, whether you like it or not. And as long as Trump is there and MAGA is there, Dave, nothing's going to get done. And it clearly shows.
Or the things that get done are going to be very bad for America.
Right. So I don't know how to get. I mean, there's this word hope, which I don't like. You have to come out and vote, and you have to be pragmatic, in my opinion. You certainly can vote for whomever you want, but as they say, things can get worse, and they'll get a lot worse under Trump, and then that'll be it.
And as I say, I would not be surprised. I think the outcome will not be as favorable as we would like. I assume that means, Judy, that you think Trump is going to get it. And tonight,
Dave, let me ask you this: do you think things could get really dark in the sense that it gets so ferocious that the Democratic Party has to meet behind the scenes and say, there's going to be a war here. We're going to have to do something, do something. I mean, does that mean here's the troops from France and England, bring them over here and say, okay, we're going to have a mega force here, and you either listen to us or you don't. That kind of thing.
Well,
I mean, I know I'm getting
well,
absurd now, but
no, no, you're
it
not.
gets to that point.
I think everything's on the table, Brian. I mean,
Mhm.
the crazies have put
'Cause I don't
everything
want
on
to
the table.
lose. If that's what you're asking me, I don't want to lose to these
Well,
people.
what would be a win? And I'm not asking you for that. That's a rhetorical. So what would be a win? Would stopping Donald Trump be a win? Yes.
I'll
but
tell you what would be a win when they fear us more than they fear Donald Trump. That's a
will
win.
not will not happen. Will not happen. Will not happen. Donald Trump has tapped in to something in the American psyche that I knew was there, but I thought it was buried deeper and
The
couldn't be brought
mistrust
out.
of government, and he tapped.
And that's it. That's still a big part of it. There's still people that believe he's a successful businessman. Do you realize that every business he's had has failed? But that doesn't matter to them.
Right.
You know what? I wonder about that, and I'll tell you why. I did some research into that. It's not as easy to leave the country as you think, to stay somewhere.
Nowadays,
a lot of countries,
it's gonna be really hard.
well, not just because of getting out of the border here. There's you have to really
And why
convince.
run away in the first place?
Well, I can
You know,
understand that.
it's our
I mean,
responsibility.
Judy and I have had that talk. Would we? And I said, no, I'm not going if my grandchildren don't go. But again, we do have one advantage. Our son has a standing offer to work which he does, now, but could work frequently, and could get employment at the University of Australia. So, I suppose, I don't know. Has there been any Dem Party candidate that was good? That's a good question.
A
Global.
presidential candidate, yeah, George McGovern was good.
And got crushed. I think Jimmy Carter was a good man, not a good president necessarily.
That essentially got fired.
JFK was right for the time. He wasn't a good man. He wasn't a good president, but he was right for the time. I always say Kennedy.
You could argue
not-
Truman was a good president.
Not to be flippant, about something, but Kennedy was the embodiment of James Dean. James Dean had 3 great roles and died, and didn't go to his Marlon Brando or Elvis Presley period of getting fat. Yes, that's right. Trump tapped into racism, also fascism, also anti-intellectualism, also, if you're like me, if you're against the NRA, he pledged. He said within the first week he'll undo any gun regulations he can. So there's that. Now, I want to leave with this. It's a question, and I really do want people to respond now. I normally, we just appreciate it, but we're going to go a few extra minutes for this. So please, everybody, try to compose a response, because I don't know the answer to this, and I really don't, and I really do want to know. Politics, tomorrow we'll see celebrity and entertainment and sports and politics combined. They're the 4 big things in America, right? Along with power and money and greed. But there's some people that have kind of disappeared from that scene, and I'm wondering where they are. And I'll name a couple. On the Democratic side, when's the last time we've heard anything from Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren? I can't remember. It's been months. Now, I'm not trying to any conspiracy theory. I'm just wondering what happened. And then on the Republican side, where's Trump's daughter? Now, I'm just wondering. I mean, is there any meaning to that? Has Bernie decided, look, I made my points, I've done it. I'm just gonna not coast out, but just do the thing. Elizabeth Warren was a fighter. I mean, that's why I supported her. Does that mean does that just mean? I don't know. I don't know what it means. I just wonder if anybody out there, if you don't get it on this one, that where are they? And I think it's going to be very important in this election, if you are, as I am, anti-Trump, that if you have strong feelings that Trump should not be the president of the United States, you need to find a group to work with to convince them. If you're African American, work in the Black community. If you're gay, trans, whatever, work in the LGBTQ community. If you're an immigrant, work in the immigrant community. Wherever you find yourself, if you believe that Trump is a blight on Christianity, work in the Christian community. Put the one up before. I didn't catch that one. It changed real quickly. Bernie has been on YouTube. Okay, good. That's what that's good. I hadn't seen from a while. I mean, I didn't know. And I guess after that, we just have to realize there's going to be an election. Somebody's going to win. So each time, Brian, just for fun, we can chart it out. And we both have to answer this. If the election were tomorrow, who do you think would be president of the United States tomorrow?
I will say this. If there were an election tonight or tomorrow, we'll have the same situation as the last time. Trump's going to challenge it. No matter what he loses by, he's going to challenge it. It's going to come down to, I think it's going to come down to a Gore Bush type situation. And then it goes to the courts, and then all hell breaks loose because we know that it's a Trump court. So based on my own answer to you, because it's a Trump court, Trump will win. And I don't like it at all.
And I'm gonna take what you said, and I'm gonna say there won't be a need for the Supreme Court, because if the election were tomorrow, Donald Trump would be the winner. What I think also, what I'm more concerned about even than that is the fact of, I believe there will be acts of violence committed before the election, during election day. And can you imagine, say, I hesitate this, but if somebody's convinced that, I don't know, pick a town, Chicago, right? Chicago's 90% Democrat or some crazy number, and they somehow, decide to attack polling places there, or voting places there, or where votes are counted, or machines. I mean, and we haven't talked about the possibility of AI, how that can influence this, or foreign powers. So, I at this point, I hope I'm wrong. But tonight, I'm going to say, if the election were tomorrow, given this crazy week as the closure for the race, I would say it would be Donald Trump. So that's it for me. I'm going to go take off and thank everyone for listening, viewing, whatever you did. If you liked it, if you like what you saw, if you like what you heard, tell others. We can always use more people. Thank you very much for your comments. That's always appreciated. Thank you, Brian. As everyone should know, if you're new, or this is, when I say it's Brian's show, it's Brian's idea. So I wouldn't be here without you, Brian.
Well, I'm not worried about that. I'm just worried about the message anyway. Dave, thank you.
No, but I think it's good to know that. Well, the reason I'm saying that, Brian, is when they come for you, I want it to be clearly you and not me. So,
right.
Let's see what we got. Armed Trump-tards in polling stations.
Essentially.
Absolutely. Trump said he's going to have the military at his inauguration to squash protests. Absolutely. And Judy, that reminds me, and hold me to it next week, people. I didn't do some research I wanted to do, and I'm not sure. I think I know the answer, but I'm not positive. Is the military, obviously the president is commander in chief, but is their first priority to uphold the commander in chief or the Constitution? I think it's the Constitution, but I don't want to say anything until I'm sure, because that'll make a huge difference. I mean, that will make a huge.
I think you're going to find out very soon.
Well, I like to know
that answer, unfortunately.
All right, Brian.
All right, on that.
Take care, man.
Wonderfully positive group of notes we gave you, folks. Being sarcastic, of course. We bid you a good night. Yeah, let's just try to survive this thing. Dave, we'll see you, and be well and get better. All right?
Sounds good.
See you.